Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into the testimony of the second witness in the ongoing Sean Combs trial.
Yeah, and our main source here is a pretty detailed YouTube report. It gives this, inside look from the courtroom itself.
Exactly. It's a perspective you don't always get from just like the standard news reports.
Right.
So our mission today is basically to pull out the most significant details, the really intriguing bits from this testimony. We want to give you a clear picture of what was said and maybe what it could all mean for the trial going forward.
And it's that firsthand observation element that's so interesting, right? It's not just the testimony transcript, it's the atmosphere, the reactions, stuff like that.
Absolutely. So let's set the scene a bit. First off, no cameras allowed in court. That's crucial. Everything we're talking about comes from personal observation.
Right, so these aren't like official court records of demeanor, just what one person saw.
Yeah. And the source described the courtroom as, believe it or not, cold. Like physically cold because of the AC. There was even mention that jurors maybe looked a bit sleepy.
Huh. It's weird how those little environmental things can play a role, A cold room, tired jurors.
Yeah.
It could subtly affect how they're taking everything in.
Could do. Then there's Combs himself. The report mentions this consistent old man in church look again. Sweaters, collared shirts.
Okay.
And apparently he's using reading glasses more often now. Looks towards the press, but doesn't really make direct eye contact, which is maybe a change.
Interesting. And the Bible reading.
Oh yeah, seen reading a Bible before court one day. And the defense team, on the other hand, reportedly seemed more energized.
Yeah.
Like a shift in their vibe.
That could mean anything, I suppose. Maybe feeling more confident, maybe just a strategic shift as things move along. It's all interpretation, isn't it?
Totally. And speaking of the defense, some, let's call them attorney updates. A sketch artist apparently complimented one lawyer's tie, which led to a whole thing about the color blue.
Okay. Random.
Right. And they've been doing musical chairs with their seating. Combs is now apparently between two female attorneys, Agnifil and Estavio. Estavio is expected to cross-examine Cassie, interestingly.
Positioning. Maybe strategic.
And Mark Garagos wasn't there. Reportedly busy with the Menendez case out in California.
Right, okay. So his absence, even if explained, might shift the team dynamic a bit.
What about the judge?
What?
Judge Arun. The source described him as kind of like a disappointed dad towards the attorneys, focused on procedure.
Okay.
But apparently very sincere with the jury and the witnesses. Genuine.
That's important for setting the tone, building trust with the jury, perhaps.
Yeah, and there was this weird little detail about a courtroom officer, Officer Riz, and Mark Garagos having some kind of like confusing, friendly but tense relationship.
Huh. Just adds to the, the human drama behind the scenes, I guess. The regulars in the courtroom.
Right. Now, before we dive into the witness testimony itself, some important warnings from the source. We will be touching on themes of sexual assault and domestic violence.
Yeah.
So everyone's aware.
Good to stay up front.
And also, for like brevity, some quotes or details might be condensed or combined. And again, super important. These are observations, interpretations, not proven facts.
Absolutely. And Combs is, of course, presumed innocent.
Presumed innocent.
Yeah.
And just a reminder, this is our third deep dive on the trial itself, and we did, 4 before that on the arrest and the initial allegations. So there's history here.
Definitely a complex situation we're unpacking. Those caveats are key when we're dealing with such, sensitive stuff. Distinguishing observation from fact.
Okay, let's get to it. The second witness. Our source notes his appearance immediately, strong, muscular build, apparently known online as a male escort.
Right.
He testified he met Cassie somewhere around 2012, 2013, said his boss called him about a job, needed a black dancer for a supposed bachelorette party, Gramercy Park Hotel.
Okay, so that's the setup, a bachelorette party request.
Yeah, expecting like a $200 striptease gig. He shows up wearing an NYPD t-shirt because he didn't have like a proper uniform.
The NYPD shirt, already a bit unusual for that kind of gig, you'd think.
Right. So he gets there, knocks. Cassie opens the door. He doesn't know who she is at this point. She's wearing a red wig, lingerie, high heels, sunglasses.
Wow. Okay, and the bachelorette party?
Not there, just Cassie. She apparently says, oh, it's my birthday. My husband wants to get me something special. And that special thing, a baby oil massage.
Okay, so the whole bachelorette thing was just a pretext.
Seems like it. The room's described as a suite, velvet couches, pretty dark, but lots of lit candles on a coffee table.
Definitely not a party vibe. More like a deliberate intimacy setup. The candles, the dim light.
Totally. Then the witness sees a man in the back of the room, wearing a white robe, a bandana, and a baseball cap.
That's quite the disguise. A robe, bandana, and a cap.
Yeah. Witness assumes it's the husband. Cassie reassures him, oh, he's not gay, he won't touch you.
Odd reassurance to need to give.
And then she pays him a few $1,000s up front, way more than the $200 agreed on, plus promises a tip later.
Okay, the money immediately signals this isn't just a standard $200 gig. The disguise, the money. Something else is clearly going on.
So there's a brief chat. Witness compliments the room, asks the guy in the robe what he does. The guy says, importing and exporting.
Importing and exporting.
Right.
Classic deflection.
Apparently got a laugh in the courtroom.
Yeah.
The witness recognized the voice instantly as Diddy's, but he didn't say anything.
Got quiet.
Then the testimony described the witness and Cassie engaging in intimate relations. Involved baby oil.
Right. And the man in the robe.
The prosecutor asked what Combs was doing. Witness said he was in the corner, self-pleasuring.
Okay, so present, watching, but physically separate. That's quite a specific dynamic being alleged.
The interaction was apparently brief that first time. Afterwards, Combs kept asking him, do you want to see us again? Want to see us again?
Persistent.
Witness says yes. Cassie gets his number. He leaves, but then almost immediately gets a text from Cassie asking for a picture of his private parts.
Wow, okay. Very direct follow-up.
He sends the photo, and then she asks him to come back to the room.
So the initial brief encounter immediately led to a request to return, seemingly on their terms.
Seems so. When he went back, testimony says it was the same scene. More prolonged intimacy between him and Cassie this time. And again, Combs allegedly self-pleasuring in the corner.
Did he get paid again?
He said he didn't recall getting more money that second time.
Yeah.
Later on, his boss is the one who told him the woman was Cassie.
Ah, so he put the pieces together after the fact.
Yeah. And he testified that all the subsequent meetings, the purpose was always the same. Sex with Cassie in front of Combs.
Always in front of Combs. Okay.
Having at different hotels. Sometimes he'd get contacted like an hour before, sometimes days in advance.
So somewhat planned, but sometimes spontaneous.
And there was a code phrase, apparently, used with hotel staff. I'm here to see black.
A code word underscores the secrecy, doesn't it?
Definitely. And the room setup was always consistent. Sheets or towels laid out on the couch, curtains always shut tight, a table with candles, baby oil or Astroglide ready.
Always the same props, the same atmosphere.
Yeah. Sometimes they'd even ask him to go buy the baby oil or Astroglide beforehand.
Okay. And the baby oil was used?
Every time? After that first encounter, apparently. And Combs often directed them, like, use more oil.
So, directing the scene.
Yeah, giving directions during the sex, too, allegedly. Things like, slow down, stop now, separate, don't finish yet.
Wow. That's a significant level of alleged control over the entire interaction.
There was apparently one attempt at some kind of role-play scenario at an airport, but it didn't work out.
Yeah.
But through all this, Combs never physically joined in, just stayed in the corner, self-pleasuring.
Always the observer, the director.
And after the witness finished, he said Cassie and Combs would then go into the bedroom together for hours.
Hours. While he waited.
Yeah. Combs would often tell him specifically not to finish yet. Sometimes want him to finish, on Cassie's stomach or inside her.
Very specific instructions again.
And after he ejaculated on her, then they'd go to the bedroom and he'd just wait, sometimes for hours, before being dismissed or asked if he was ready to go again.
So the encounters could last a really long time, 1 to 10 hours, the source mentioned.
Even 1 to 10 hours. He even testified that one time he pretended to finish because he just couldn't physically. And Combs apparently questioned him about it later, like making sure he actually had.
That level of scrutiny, it really paints a picture of, well, alleged control and perhaps a really unusual exploitative dynamic.
It's intense, and it gets more disturbing. The witness testified Cassie once asked him to urinate on her.
Okay.
Combs was allegedly self-pleasuring during this and apparently even corrected the witness on how he was doing it.
Corrected him, huh?
He also alleged Combs recorded them, once or twice maybe, with a cell phone or a camcorder.
Recording without consent. That could have serious legal implications, if true.
Yeah. Now, during this part of the testimony, Combs' demeanor in court reportedly shifted. He didn't quite rigid, statuesque, but now subtle movements. Leaning back, shifting his shoulder, propping his arm, lifting his chin. Seemed more reactive near the end.
Body language is always tricky to interpret, but a noticeable shift is noticeable.
The witness also mentioned he only saw Cassie seem under the influence once passed out on a couch. But he did claim Combs offered him Molly, MDMA.
Offered him drugs.
Yeah. Said it made him feel like a jackass, ended up handing out $100 bills in Times Square, felt sick but euphoric.
This is quite an episode.
After that, he tried to contact Cassie, said he was concerned, eventually sent some, vulgar text just trying to get any response to see if she was okay.
So he felt a level of concern for her well-being despite the circumstances.
Seems so. He also testified that he developed erectile dysfunction after the first time he saw Combs hit Cassie.
Okay, that's a major turning point. Witnessing violence.
Yeah. This leads right into that. He described an incident at Cassie's house. Heard Combs yelling for Cassie. She apparently said something about needing a second with the computer, personal info on it.
Right.
Then Combs came out, allegedly threw a liquor bottle against the wall, grabbed Cassie by the hair, dragged her screaming into the bedroom.
Dragged her by the hair?
Yeah. Witness heard slapping sounds and Cassie saying, I'm sorry, and allegedly heard Combs say, bitch, when I tell you to come here, you come now, not later.
That's incredibly violent and controlling language being alleged there, a direct account of physical abuse.
The witness said he was shocked, terrified, didn't step in, said he feared for his life, mentioned worrying about bodyguards, Combs having unlimited power.
His fear, whether justified or just perceived, highlights the power imbalance he felt was there. Significant intimidation factor alleged.
And then after all that, Combs allegedly just came out and asked if they were ready to continue. Go back to the sexual activity.
Wow. The casualness after such alleged violence.
Witness said he couldn't. He just couldn't perform after that. But he did go back later. Said he felt he'd sort of developed a friendship with Cassie and wanted to check on her.
So he returned out of concern despite witnessing that. That's complex.
There's another incident he described. Essex House Hotel. Heard Cassie yelling, I'm sorry. Again, sounds of slapping.
Another instance of alleged violence?
Then he saw Combs walk out of the bedroom naked, maybe with a towel. Said it reminded him of that Intercontinental Hotel video footage that surfaced.
Ah, drawing a parallel to known evidence.
Cassie then apparently ran out into the living room, jumped into the witness's lap, shaking uncontrollably.
Clearly distressed.
He said he asked her, why are you staying with him if he's hitting you? You're in danger. But Cassie just tried to convince him she was okay.
Denial or perhaps fear keeping her there, based on his account.
And then they were alone for the first time. He described Cassie as usually not being a kisser, but she started making out with him intensely. Things started to get intimate between them.
A shift in their dynamic when Combs wasn't right there.
But then Combs came back in, saw them, apparently said something like, oh, I like that you guys are getting along now.
Just walked in on them and approved.
Yeah. Witness said he immediately couldn't continue again. Just stopped.
Understandable. The whole situation sounds incredibly fraught.
He also mentioned why he didn't go to the police. Said he was scared for his life because Combs had apparently taken his ID card earlier and photographed it.
Taking his ID? That feels like a direct threat, holding something over him. A way to ensure silence, maybe?
Yeah, he felt trapped, but still hoped maybe he could help Cassie leave somehow.
A difficult position to be in, if true.
One more incident he described. Walked into a room, saw another man performing oral sex on Cassie.
Okay, so other people were involved sometime.
Apparently. But this man kept looking over at Combs, who was also in the room. Combs allegedly snapped at him. Look, motherfucker, you better stop looking at me in my face.
Whoa, intense possessiveness or control asserted there?
The man got scared, denied looking. Cassie ran to the other side of the room. Then Combs apparently calmed down, said something like, okay, all right, we're here to have fun, not do anything else, and told Cassie to come back to the couch. She seemed scared.
Again, reinforcing that alleged dynamic of fear and control, even with others present.
Now, about the money. He said he got paid anywhere from like $700 up to maybe $6,000 per encounter. Mostly Cassie paid him.
Okay, significant amounts.
Combs apparently asked once, did you guys get your bread? Like checking if you'd been paid.
Acknowledging the financial transaction.
But here's a twist. The witness claimed he didn't really feel like he was being paid for sex. He said he was just excited to be in their world, because they were famous. Never asked for money. Saw it more as them just sharing their wealth.
That's a very specific framing of the payments. Less transactional, more a lifestyle access.
Yeah. And right when he said that, Combs, who was watching him, reportedly gave a small nod, like acknowledging that sentiment.
Huh. Combs nodded at that part. Interesting reaction.
Witness still mentioned feeling scared overall, though, because Combs had his ID info.
Right. That underlying fear remained.
This testimony, as you can imagine, was very explicit. Combs's adult daughters actually left the courtroom twice during it. His mother and sons stayed.
Understandable. Must be incredibly difficult for the family to hear.
There's been a lot of talk online about the family being there. Some think it's support, showing the jury they believe him. Others think it's potentially traumatic for the daughters, maybe even manipulative.
Yeah, public perception is really divided on that. It's a complex family dynamic playing out in public.
Someone pointed out the daughters are around the age Cassie was when the alleged grooming started. And someone else reportedly played Cassie's song Me and You on speakers near the courthouse when the family was around.
Wow. People are definitely engaging with this case very intensely, bringing in outside elements.
The source also described the son's demeanor. Christian apparently has similar mannerisms to Combs. Justin was taking notes, passing them. Quincy seemed very attentive, observant.
Just absorbing everything, it sounds like. A united front, but individually processing.
Okay, let's switch gears slightly. Witness credibility and demeanor. How did he come across?
Well, the source felt he seemed very honest, direct, made natural pauses, didn't feel rehearsed.
Okay. But physically?
Walked in looking strong, confident, but on the stand, he seemed really uncomfortable, hunched over, almost like he was melting into the chair.
Interesting contrast. Confidence walking in, discomfort testifying.
Yeah. The overall feeling from the source seemed like he was telling the truth, even if it was deeply uncomfortable for him. He also confirmed Cassie never replied to those texts he sent later.
Right. Okay, so that was the direct examination. Then came the cross-examination by defense attorney Xavier Donaldson.
It's a new guy on the team, right? Joined just before the trial.
Yeah. Described as tall, very well-dressed, kind of stoic. But his cross-exam style sounds different. Lots of body language. Very theatrical, showman-like, rapid-fire questions.
Right.
And he used the word correct constantly, like maybe 200 times over 2 days.
200 times? Wow. That sounds potentially annoying or maybe confusing.
Source said it was sometimes hard to follow. Donaldson apparently moved around a lot, looked all over the courtroom, maybe even out the window while asking a question, took his glasses on and off without reading anything.
Okay, that's unusual. Performance art, cross-examination.
The judge actually had to remind him several times, that's a statement, not a question, counsel. And he'd ask for breaks right in the middle of asking a question.
Huh. Disrupting the flow. What was the witness's reaction?
Apparently more hostile, snappier with Donaldson compared to the prosecutor. He kept having to correct Donaldson's questions.
So pushing back.
A key line of questioning was about the witness's job, his website for male escorts, the company's slogan, Ultimate Ladies Night Experience. Witness seemed confused about why that was relevant.
Trying to discredit him based on his profession, perhaps? A common tactic.
Donaldson also kept asking the same things over and over, just slightly rephrased. Didn't seem to lead anywhere new. There was confusion about who contacted whom first and where they met. Donaldson's questions sometimes seemed to contradict the witness's earlier testimony.
So trying to catch him in a contradiction, but maybe not succeeding.
Seemed that way. Questions about the hotel room layout were also reportedly confusing, and just endless, repetitive questions about the moment he arrived, who opened the door, the money exchange.
Sounds exhausting. Did it seem effective?
Well, another reporter in the courtroom was seen looking distressed during it. And Combs himself was apparently very reactive now, not statuesque anymore. Doing this three-point look, witness, jury, Donaldson with a facial expression like, what the hell is going on?
Combs looked frustrated with his own lawyer.
That was the interpretation.
Yeah.
There was this one moment Donaldson asked a correct question. Combs turned to the jury almost expectantly, like, here it comes. But then the witness answered, incorrect.
Yeah.
Combs looked confused. Seemed like a planned moment that just fizzled.
Oof. A misfire.
There was also confusion about which specific incident Donaldson was even asking about sometimes. Questions about the timeline of undressing, applying baby oil.
Just digging into minutia.
Yeah. At one point, the witness had to ask Donaldson to speak into the microphone.
Okay. Sounds like maybe it wasn't the smoothest cross-examination.
Some questions seemed aimed at suggesting Cassie was enjoying it all, like asking if she rubbed him down, seemed aroused, called him beautiful, complimented his size.
Trying to paint her as a willing, enthusiastic participant. Risky strategy.
He asked about who paid for the hotel rooms. Witness kept saying he didn't know or that Donaldson's premise was wrong.
Pushing back on the assumptions.
There was literally a pause mid-question because someone sneezed and Donaldson said, bless you.
Huh. Okay. Adds to the slightly chaotic feel.
The source described parts of the cross as just vulgar. Asked about the specific sexual position in the first encounter, witness couldn't recall that detail. Asked if Cassie said he was the largest she'd ever seen.
And the witness confirmed that part.
Yes, he confirmed she said that. Then, dead silence in the court. Just the sketch artist's chalk sound.
Dramatic.
Then the judge called for a sidebar. White noise machine comes on.
Okay, what was that about?
During the sidebar, apparently the issue was Donaldson might have had to document the witness's 2024 interview transcript with prosecutors visible, maybe even visible to the jury, while he was questioning the witness about inconsistencies between that interview and his testimony.
Oh, that's a potential problem. Showing evidence improperly.
Judge and prosecutor Comey expressed concern. Donaldson said it was unintentional.
Accidental or not, it's not ideal procedure.
After that, the rest of the cross was apparently pretty uneventful. Combs kept staring down the witness, doing the three-point look, still looking frustrated with his defense.
So the overall impression of the cross was...
The source felt the direct examination had this heavy emotional weight. But the cross-examination felt frustrating, confusing. It might have actually lessened the emotional impact of the testimony for people watching, maybe even the jury. Just muddied the waters.
Interesting. Sometimes an overly aggressive or confusing cross can backfire that way, dilute the impact rather than dismantle it.
Then the prosecutor, Comey, got a chance for rebuttal.
Okay, how did she approach it?
Very direct. Series of pointed questions, basically reinforcing the core allegations. Was it Combs directing the baby oil, directing the oral sex, directing intercourse? Was it Combs who threw the bottle, Combs who dragged Kathy, Combs who called her a bitch, Combs who then asked them to continue sexually?
Just driving home the prosecution's main points, connecting everything back to Combs' alleged actions and control, counteracting the defense's attempt to muddy things.
Yeah. There was a brief argument over that text message the witness sent later saying he loved Cassie and Combs.
Ah, yes, the defense probably tried to use that.
Donaldson objected when the witness explained why he sent it, saying it was just bait, trying to get a response to check if Cassie was okay, make them think he was okay with it all. Donaldson argued it was non-responsive.
But the judge allowed it.
Judge overruled the objection, said it was responsive. Comey apparently gave Donaldson a very dismissive look when he made the motion to strike.
So prosecution got the last word on clarifying that potentially damaging text.
Pretty much. And one final image from the source. During the break, right after this witness finished, Combs' family was seen outside the courtroom, in a prayer circle. This was just before Cassie herself was expected to testify next.
Wow. A poignant moment. Really underscores the human element and the immense pressure surrounding this trial, especially leading into Cassie's testimony.
So wrapping up this witness, what are the big takeaways? We heard these incredibly disturbing allegations about sexual encounters, Combs allegedly orchestrating everything, witnessing violence against Cassie.
Right, a very detailed and graphic account painting a picture of control, voyeurism, and abuse. But then contrasted with this challenging, sometimes confusing cross-examination from the defense that tried to poke holes and question his motives and credibility.
Definitely leaves a lot of questions about the witness's reliability, about the defense's strategy, and just the starkly different narratives being presented.
The jury has a huge task ahead, weighing that testimony against the cross-examination and all the other evidence to come.
It leads to a bigger thought, doesn't it? Thinking about this testimony, so detailed, so uncomfortable. How does hearing this kind of information, regardless of the verdict, affect how we see things? How does it impact public perception?
That's a really important question. What does this level of intense, granular detail about alleged power dynamics, coercion, and abuse reveal? Even if it's just allegations at this stage, hearing it laid out like this, it forces a confrontation with the realities of how power can operate in relationships, especially when there's fame and wealth involved.
Yeah. How might it change conversations about those imbalances long after this specific trial is over? Something to think about. And looking ahead, the next big step is Cassie Ventura's own testimony, her direct and cross-examination. It's going to be absolutely pivotal.
Undoubtedly. We'll be watching closely for reports on that.
And as soon as we have reliable information, we'll bring you our next deep dive, focusing entirely on her account.